Is it possible to find your passion? Do we all have a purpose? Do we all have a calling? Are you feeling lost because you don't know what it is that you're meant to be doing with your life? I had all of these questions. I felt like I didn't know who I was, what it is that I had to offer the world. But I knew I was deeply unfulfilled with the way things were, and that deep down, I had something to offer. But I didn't know where to begin to find it. This is my story of how I found my passion. I grew up reading a lot of self-help books, even as a teenager. I loved that stuff, but I also had a lot of mental problems. I was deeply insecure. I had depression. I was lonely, and I just didn't feel very seen. I didn't know who I was. I also had some deeply ingrained ideas about what life was about, and it was success, especially financial success, career success. I used to idolize entrepreneurs, millionaires, billionaires. I used to love reading the Sunday Times Rich List. That seemed like the thing that was venerated by society, the thing to aspire towards. And that was my guiding light. But I didn't know what it was that I truly had to offer the world. And part of the problem was that I was pretty good at a lot of things. I was a well-rounded student. There was no one subject that stood out for me. I wasn't the best at music, the best at science. I was just good. And I could pick up things quite easily. You know, I could start playing the piano and within a few days be able to play tunes. I could start a new hobby like archery or rounders and be good at it to begin with. So nothing stood out to me. And I was deeply envious of people who had a clear passion, something that they obsessed over, something that it's all they could talk about, it's all they spent their time on. Maybe they were really into karate or even football, or they loved history. I wish I had that. But in the end, because I didn't have anything that stood out particularly, I was kind of aimless. And I also didn't invest my time. So by the time I was in my 20s, I felt pretty boring. I would spend my time watching Netflix, playing games, socializing, going out for drinks, partying. If someone asked me, what are your interests? I dreaded the question because I didn't really know what to say. Like I loved economics. I used to love reading The Economist. Didn't feel like the news was a great interest. Didn't feel like reading was a great interest, even though I was doing those things. But I was doing well in my career. I was successful. I was making progress. And the entertainment I had from the life around me in London was enough to satisfy me, mostly. Apart from these deep moments of despair. A just general sense of unfulfillment. But I could tide myself over with a promotion or with focusing on work, and I would be a workaholic. I would work, 12, 14 hours a day. So the question of passion or purpose used to frustrate me. And I remember when I started to explore the idea of starting my own business, I went to some workshops on it. And the advice was, make sure what you're doing is something you're passionate about. Of course, I convinced myself that what I was passionate about was creating a business. So it didn't matter what it was. And in the end, I went after a niche that had a lot of commercial opportunity at the time, which was vegan sports nutrition. And I started a business in that area. And for the starting period, I loved it. I really did, because I was building a business. I was doing market research. I was building the website. I was doing the graphics, the content. Loved it. But with time, the reality set in of what I was doing. And I was spending a lot of time on social media, engaging with my customers, building organic reach. And I started to feel really inauthentic. Because the truth was, I wasn't really vegan. And I wasn't into sports nutrition. I wasn't into sports. But there I was online posting on these social media channels for veganism or for sports, creating content around the best plant-based professional athletes. And I didn't care. But these other people did, and I felt really disingenuous. And that was staring at me in the face every single day. And that was pretty much the number one reason why I decided to shut that business down. I realized if I really fully commit myself to this is my life, and it doesn't feel right. So I gave up the business, everything I'd invested into it, all of the potential. But I still didn't know what my passion or what my purpose was, except now I was out of a job. I'd quit London, I'd quit my career, I'd quit my business, and I was really lost. And I did a lot of deep self-reflection. I desperately wanted to know how to invest my energy, what to focus on. I was so envious of the people that had this clarity. But here's the thing about passion. The first is that actually it might be staring at you in the face and you don't realize. It's right under your nose. So one of the things you can do is take a look at how you're currently living. Don't change a thing. How are you spending your time now? Because there may be clues with regards to your passion. And I remember doing that exercise and thinking to myself, well, I'm reading, I'm writing, doesn't really feel like a passion, like maybe I'll explore some of these things. But I didn't realize how deep you can go with that self-reflection. And it's the most obvious things that don't occur to us because they are so ingrained into who we are, we don't know that they're abnormal. So for me, I didn't realize that I was quite unique in the conversations I was having with people. I'd often heard from friends, oh wow, whenever we talk, we have such deep, meaningful chats. And I was like, all right, this is just kind of how I have conversation. And pretty much all of my conversations would gravitate to something deeper and more profound and more interesting because that's what I was curious about. And actually, what I realized is I had curiosity in the other person that perhaps they'd never experienced before. So they would say something and I would just follow that thread and I'd want to go deeper into it, especially if there was something that was emotionally charged. If someone was passionate about something, oh my God, I would love to hear about that and I would ask questions about it. Even if on the surface it might sound boring. If someone was interested in trains, you could think, oh God, trains, I don't care about trains. But I was curious about their passion and so I'd ask them about it, and as you go deeper into it, you learn different things that you hadn't have expected. So I had this curiosity and I didn't realize how much of a strength that was for me. And I didn't realize the strength I had in creating connection. That I could create a space that wasn't judgmental. I think that came from the upbringing I had, where my siblings had autism. And so I was around people who were different. And I was queer, so I was different. So I was just very comfortable being around people who were different and not being judgmental, or at least being less judgmental, because I obviously have judgments that come up in my mind. I'm not a saint. So I realized I had this curiosity, I had this strength in connection, and I'd also always had this interest in psychology. I'd been reading self-help books since I was a teenager. I love that stuff. But I, for some reason, was not able to tie these threads together into something cohesive. And it was only through a process of exploration that it started to all make sense. There's this idea that things only make sense in retrospect. It's only when you look back that you can connect all these dots. And that was true for me as well. So when I moved to Melbourne, I just allowed myself to freely explore whatever it was that I was curious about. And as it so happened, At the startup I joined, there was a coach, an in-house coach, which was pretty unique. And I feel very blessed to have experienced that. Because I had had the idea of being a coach, but there was so much stigma in my mind about that. And so I rejected it. And I just compartmentalized that. And I was like, no, could not possibly be a coach. I don't want to be like that. And then here I was in Melbourne, and I was having an experience of working with a coach. And it was completely different to the experience I thought I would have, the experience I'd created in my mind. And it opened me up. And then we started to have these conversations, and he started to reflect things back to me, and I realized, wow, okay, I'm actually pretty similar to him in terms of how he asked these questions, in terms of the depth of our conversation. And then with time, it opened up for me. And after about a year or so, he said, hey, there's this online program to train to be a coach if you were curious about it. And it just came at the right time, and I was open to that suggestion, and I decided to explore it. And I followed that thread. And at the same time, I was trying loads of different activities, loads of different potential routes for me to go down. But in the end, I was really just following that same sense of excitement, that same sense of curiosity that I would follow in a conversation. It's quite subtle, this sense of energy, of excitement. But you can feel it in your body. That's how I came up with the title for this YouTube video. I came up with a long list of potential things to talk about, but this was one that jumped out at me, just a feeling. And so I've pursued it. And now I'm in the process of creating it, and you're in the process of watching it. And I think that's how passion works as well. It's not necessarily obvious. If you weren't in an environment growing up where something was really clear for you, you have to take away some of the noise. You have to increase your sensitivity to these emotional cues within you. And you have to follow the threads. It is an adventure to find your passion. Or more specifically, to create your passion. Because it may not be that it's inherent within you, but as you explore things, you start to decide to focus your energy on them. And as you focus your energy on something, you become more entwined with it. It's just more enjoyable for you the more that you do something. And you start sacrificing other things for this one thing, and it will become clearer. But allow yourself to let go of the judgments you have. And in fact, pay attention to the things you are judging, because they are clues. If there's resistance around one thing, for me it was around coaching. If I was really paying attention to where I felt the most resistance, well, that is a damn good clue. I now live trying to step into the areas that I resist the most, because those are the parts that then open up my life. It creates so much opportunity, because that's where you grow. You're changing in those areas of resistance. Don't be afraid of them. But I think in general, it's okay to not have a passion. Just try and live intentionally. Try to be intentional about the choices that you make. And then whatever it is that is most valuable to you in your life will start to emerge. It will come through. So that's my story, discovering my passion. I hope that's been of interest to you. If it is, please like it, please follow, please share. And I would love to know in the comments, what is it that you're passionate about? How do you feel about passion or purpose? Do you think it exists? And what's resonated in this video for you? I really do love reading your comments, so thank you so much, and I'll see you again.